Oklahoma requires schools to teach 2020 election conspiracies. This is a hell of a thing. Here it is.
This is from the Mirror Tier. The Oklahoma Board of Education has approved new curriculum standards that require students to be taught that the 2020 presidential election was rife with fraud or discrepancies. Sarah Parshall-Perry, what do you think?
I have to tell you, I think the case is specifically about the power of a state to transform its education through curriculum.
Yeah.
And I think Oklahoma is leading the way. I am very impressed with the fact that this is made specifically to create critical thinkers. And don't we need more of that in American education?
Put it up, full mass, put up his picture. Now this is a happy camper here, okay? All right, so Oklahoma is going to basically teach that the election was stolen. Now, the new non-fact-based curriculum will be implemented in the 2025-2026 school year. We are literally in hell, ladies and gentlemen, or at least the twilight version of it. Changes made by State Superintendent of Education, Mr. Ryan Walters there. One man, yeah, he has that authority. And Walters is proud to spread disinformation. Here it is.
Why would you want Oklahoma students exposed to thoroughly debunked election conspiracy theories in the classroom?
Well, look, I've seen all those headlines too, and you know, here's the reality. Look, President Trump should have won the 2020 election. You know, you look at things like the ballot dumps, you look at the mail-in ballots, you look at the voter fraud, you look at the manipulation by the media in foreign countries, and look, what we've got in the standards are facts. We want critical thinking students, we want critical thinking Americans.
Put his picture back up. Sir, you're not a critically thinking adult. But you want critically thinking students. Keep his picture up for a second. Can I ask you a question, Mr. Walters? If Trump should have won the election, now I'm just asking, which means that crimes took place, right? Okay, we can agree on this. Now that Trump has become president again and is in charge of all investigatory agencies, how many individuals has he called to be arrested for said fraud? How many investigations into the fraud has he launched? How many investigations into fraud has the Department of Justice launched? Let me count them. 0. Not one. You know, the people, if this happened, they are still here. Statute of limitation has not run out. Investigations could happen now. None have happened, sir. Once again, I encourage you to critically think. I don't even need to go to the headlines or the back and forth of evidence or the 60 plus judges that Trump appointed throughout the United States of America who all said there was no there. I don't have to do that. Simply one fact. There is no investigation at all. And Trump is back in the White House. Does he seem like a man who just gets power and says, you know, I'm just gonna let it go? All right, the new curriculum also removed a prior proposal for lessons about George Floyd's murder and Black Lives Matter, and teaches as fact the contested theory that COVID-19 emerged from a lab leak. The Republican-led state's new high school history curriculum says students must learn to dissect the results of the 2020 election, including learning about alleged mail-in voter fraud, quote, an unforeseen record number of voters, and quote, security risk of mail-in balloting, end quote. A new curriculum was drafted by a review committee that includes Kevin Roberts, who's president of the Heritage Foundation, DC-based conservative think tank that created the blueprint for the second Trump term, known as Project 2025, and conservative talk show host Dennis Prager. There you go. All right, you guys, that's a winning team right there. If you want bigotry, racism, and misinformation, you stick with those guys. You'll have it every day. There's more. Former Democratic President Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election. Kids, if you want facts and good information, just make sure you watch Indisputable every day. With 306 electoral votes, constitutionally required, by the way, and a 7 million vote margin in the popular vote, which really hurt Trump's feelings. The right-wing myth that the 2020 presidential election was stolen from Trump, sometimes called the big lie, emerged from Trump himself in his efforts to overturn his defeat. Unfortunately, about 1/3 of Americans still believe the election was stolen from Trump in September 2023, but not everyone in the GOP is on board. Mike Hunter, former Oklahoma Republican Attorney General, filed a lawsuit on behalf of 5 family members of students and 2 public school teachers against the Oklahoma State Department of Education and Mr. Walters for the ridiculous policy. They argue that Walters' State Department of Education did not follow proper protocol when passing through the new standards and are asking a judge to consider the new social studies curriculum invalid, null, and void. That's called proper education. All right, Jordan, thoughts here?
I think with this, and like you lay out with Project 2025, Heritage Foundation, all Prager, all of these attempts to influence curriculums across the country, we all need to take a step back and commit to seriously thinking about the ways the right have used education as political warfare. And you've heard people say, like, there is power in education, and you really can't overstate that. And that's why they are so desperate to try to dumb down future generations, teaching them outright lies, conspiracy theories, mistruths, misinformation. It's not because of a partisan objective. There might be an element of that, but their ultimate reason is to create a dumber population so they are easier to take advantage of, to mislead, to control. That's what they want. And the ways that the ways they have used education as a cudgel throughout history needs to be acknowledged here. Like tying property taxes to education funding and the historical implications of that due to redlining has led to generational consequences in Black communities. This was by design. And they are continuing this long, awful history of using education as a cudgel in this country. So of course we see this as ridiculous. 2020 happened as we all watched it play out, but they can't accept that. But there are other motives here that must be included. And I really encourage the viewers here to think about that long term, what that would look like.
Man, you make a great point again about even how we do the politics of this, right? The politics of tying property taxation to funding for your local school district was, once again, another racially biased approach steeped in not only racism, but classism. And you have other models in other countries. Well, they do something like this. The money goes to a collective, let's call it a state. The state then has the legal obligation to equally distribute the money throughout the province, or in our case, the counties, regions, etc. That is not how we do it here. It is truly the definition of a non-equitable distribution, because you're not distributing money to individuals who pay taxes. You're distributing money to individuals who are children and are being educated. So why the unfair approach?